before you arrived here, talking to some people about how they would do special teams analysis in terms of players available, guys in draft, all that stuff. And the special teams coordinator had a heavier role in that than maybe other positions because, quite frankly, most of the scouts and they didn't know the positions as well. Do you kind of have that same role? Do they lean on you in the off season in terms of analyzing who's out there, whatever the special teams specialist might be?
Yeah, it's pretty similar here than to the other places I've been, whether it's free agency or the draft. There's a select number of guys, both at specialist position, kicker, punter, snapper, holder, returners, as well as different positional players that they might want an opinion on it. And that's kind of the role, as I see it, all assistant coaches, whatever they want you to evaluate, here's our opinion. Whether or not that weighs or is a tiebreaker or is like the final decision, like that always remains to be seen. But, yeah, we're involved to some degree.
Do you expect to have Matt Prater for the last game of the season?
Expect to have him. That decision is way beyond my head, above my head. Matt's really close, and if he had to kick this week, it would be because he's healthy. Decision makers feel like that's the best thing for the team. I always trust Matt if he says he can go, and we'll find out at the end of the week what that looks like.
I saw a stat where it looked like blocked field goals are up. Is there just a general theme there, or what would you attribute that to?
It seems like it's up. I mean, I think I saw 4 this morning around the league. There's 1 in the game last night. Obviously, the team we're playing, they had 1 against us earlier in the season. I haven't studied, like, this year in comparison to other years, but it does seem like they're coming across the tape more frequently.
How do you assess Chad's season overall?
I would say that after this week, we'll be able to assess the whole season overall.
Through 16 games.
I mean, I've said it in here. I think Chad's done a good job with the opportunity that he's gotten. There's been more good than bad. He's a really good person, works hard. His results have mostly been positive.
I know that when you find that long snapper and you're able to have that consistency with them, it's not a position that's necessarily rotated much throughout the league. What does it mean to have that consistency week in and week out from a guy like Aaron Brewer?
Yeah, Aaron's a stud. I've been around him since his rookie year. Had him for 3 years in Denver and then obviously 7 years here. So I've seen him grow up as a person and a player. He's got a really good skill set. Athletically, kind of calms the waters. We've had some rotating pieces in there. In terms of our punt team, the field goal team, there's been some new pieces, but he's a really consistent person. He's a really consistent player, and I think when you have that in that position, it's certainly better than not having that at that position.
I'm sure for Chad, having Matt as kind of a resource just to talk and just watch is invaluable. How have you seen that, or have you seen kind of, not just the interaction, kind of, is anything rubbing off? Like, have you seen him, like, pick things up from him? What's that been like?
Well, before Chad transferred to Maryland, he was at Eastern Michigan, and he kicked with Matt at times. Him and actually Jake Moody were playing this week for Michigan. Matt's always really enjoyed kicking with people, against people, whether it's a competitive side or otherwise. Like sometimes, and again, I've known Matt for a long time, going back to Denver, there was a time in which pregame warm-up, was competitive amongst the kickers. It's not quite as much like that anymore, but I think Matt has been an open book in my presence to Chad. I think they have a good relationship, but that relationship isn't months old. That relationship is years old, and all veteran players have been through to some degree what the younger players are going through. So, Matt's a good pro with that stuff, and I think Chad's been able to absorb as much as he can in their time together here.
When you say competitive pregame, you mean like kickers from opposite teams being competitive, or like guys?
Well, I mean, you've got one kicker on your team, they've got one kicker on their team, and I would say that there would be times, again, like I've been in the league since '03, there'd be times where guys would be like, one guy would kick a 60-yarder, next guy would kick a 62-yarder, the next guy would go back, and it's almost like a game of horse, who can go back further. I remember some of you guys were there, Mexico City, pregame warm-up in '06, where, was it Neil Rackers that was the kicker here? Him and Nedney are kicking 70-plus yarders in pregame over the tops of the offense and defense, really just see how far the ball flies. But that doesn't happen as much anymore.
Do you think, just generally, when owners, teams, or whatever are looking for a new head coach, that they should look closer, or not, I shouldn't even say closer at all, at special teams coaches as potential head coaches?
I do.
Specific reasons why it would be a good choice, obviously depending on the person.
Yeah. Trying to see how I can put this. I think there's elements that go into being a head coach and the leader of an organization, the leader of a team, that offense and defensive coaches don't necessarily experience as much as special teams coaches. When it comes to roster management, who's up, who's down, how one side of the ball may affect the other, how linemen may affect skill positions, looking at things globally as opposed to, their side of the ball. Most of us, at least I have been in my career, and I think several of my counterparts have in their career, were involved in the end-of-game scenarios. You're involved in the clock management part. You're involved in the, what if we kick this? What if we went for it? What if we punted here? How should we handle the situational football stuff? There's more exposure to that from a special teams coach's perspective than there is sometimes in an offense and defensive situation. But, it all comes down to the person. There's a ton of turnover every year at the head coaching spot. And probably, in some years it's whatever, 9, 10 plus. In some years it's as few as 4 or 5. It's surprising, given Coach Harbaugh's success in Baltimore, that it didn't ever pick up more steam. But there's been guys, Joe Judge had a chance. Riz is obviously getting his shot now. Rich Bisaccia, when he was with the Raiders, obviously took them to the playoffs. But, I'm not sure what each owner is looking for in that position. And, generally speaking, in order to get a head coaching job, most of the time you've got to be associated with a team who's had some fairly sustained success, and your side of ball, your specialty, has had some success. And it's an interesting question because there's just so many angles at it. I've never sat on the other side of the table, right? Like, I don't know what those decision makers are necessarily looking for, but hopefully there's an uptick in opportunities for people.
When you say some of your counterparts kind of have the same type of role that you have, is some a lot? Is like a lot of guys or a few guys? Like, how would you quantify what that sum is? Is it pretty common for the special teams coordinator to be as involved as you are?
I don't know that. I think some, meaning more than one. We have to be involved in some of the situational stuff. Like, is this a hurry-up field goal, or is it not? Like, if the special teams coach is not involved in it, then it's going to be an absolute mess, regardless of whose decision it is to send the field goal team, on the field in those times. But I can't tell you percentage-wise like how many guys, but there's certainly some other people that I talk to that have similar involvement in those things as I do.
Last at least 2 or 3 coaches that have been here, I forgot when you got here, but you've had an immense role with a lot of guys and former coaches here. talked a lot about your role. Do you like having that big of a role with some of these coaches and being a resource for the head coach?
Yeah, whatever a guy wants from us as assistant coaches, that's our job. And if it's to be involved in more things than just, our position or our side of ball, I do like it. I've been in that role since John Fox hired me in '09. There's been some years where it's not been quite as much as others, but it's stuff that we study. But I would also say this, like with more organizations expanding the roles of game management and analytics, there's more people that study than there has been before.